What's up everyone? Welcome back to the channel. My name is Soshtvi and today we're discussing all my books I read in December. I cannot believe we're in 2025 already. Feels weird to me, but here we are. Happy New Year, I guess. I finished the year off on a great note. I read some great books, which I can't wait to discuss with you guys. Yeah, I think without wasting any time, let's just get into it. Let me know what books you read, by the way, in December. I feel like people always read the most interesting books in December. People, from my experience, I've seen usually read holiday reads a lot in December, which I did not. I'm not into holiday reads. So yeah, I am curious to see what you guys read in December. Starting off with the books I read in the first week of December itself. I read all of these in the first week, actually, not even the first week, the first few days of December, and that is the Natural series. Now, I read The Naturals in November and talked about it extensively in my Pune vlog and also my November wrap up. So, I won't get into it. All I'll say is that I wasn't the biggest fan of this book, but I really liked the mystery aspect of the book, so I wanted to continue with the series. And if you don't know what this is about, this is The Naturals by Jennifer Lynn Barnes, and the book is basically, the series is basically about these kids who have these enhanced abilities. Like, some of them are really good at profiling people, some of them can read emotions really well, some of them can lie really well and detect lies, and also someone who's really good with numbers and stuff like that. So the FBI recruits these kids to help them crack cold cases, and obviously a bunch of teenagers, FBI, serial killers, all hell breaks loose in these books. First book wasn't the biggest fan, but I loved the mystery and I wanted to continue with it. So I did pick up Killer Instinct, which is the second book, and boy, when I tell you whatever we got in the first book doesn't even compare to the shit that goes down in the rest of the series. Oh my god, the series really gets unhinged in the best way. I had so much fun reading this book. I feel like within the first quarter of the book, a quarter of the book through, and you already go full speed into this intensely dark mystery. It was so interesting, so gripping. I could not take my eyes off this book. I had to stay up till 5 a.m. to finish it. I literally could not put it down. And then at 5 a.m., when I finished this book, I spent half an hour pacing my living room because of everything that went down in this book, and immediately got on Amazon and ordered the other two books as well. Like, that's how insane the reading experience was. And I had to get to work that morning. So I went to work thinking about the series all day long, got back home, and immediately got into the next two books. So if that doesn't explain how gripping these books are, I don't know what to tell you. I think one of my favorite aspects about these books is that the profilers in this book, our main girl in this book, Cassie, is a profiler, and the way she's taught to profile her serial killers is to put herself in the perspective of the killers. So every time she's viewing a crime scene or she's thinking about the killer's motive, she's thinking in terms of you did this or I did this, which is so interesting to see. And we also have like interlaced chapters of the killer's perspective throughout these books, and we see them speaking in terms of I and you. It's such a chilling experience, honestly. The books are very Criminal Minds coded as well, so if you enjoy that show, give this a chance. I will say the issues I had with the first book do carry through quite a bit into the rest of the series. Mainly the issues I had with is the way she writes the characters. They're very stereotypical and have like pretty much one shade to their personality, which is not something I'm a fan of. And she writes all her characters the same way. So essentially the characters that we see in this series are the exact same as the characters we see in the Inheritance games. Not a fan of that. And the way she writes the dynamics is very weird and cryptic and pretentious, and a little too pretentious. They're meant to be pretentious, but they're a little too pretentious because they're not grounded in reality at all, which is why you just don't find yourself getting attached to them or relating to them. Like, Cassie is exactly like Avery from Inheritance games, and honestly she's just there. I feel like Cassie really suffers from the main character syndrome. Her personality is just being the main character. That's all there is to her. There's Dean, he's one of the love interests in the book. I cannot talk enough about how much I hate Dean. Oh my god. Literally, she wrote four books and a novella, and forgot to give him a single shred of character. His personality is just being brood. That's his personality. Like, this is gonna be a very niche reference, but if you grew up watching pretentious movie reviews with Kanan and Biswa, and you watched their one review that they did of Main Prem Ki Diwani Hu, where he talks about how movie is so energetic, but the second Abhishek Bachchan walks into the movie, he single-handedly pulls down the entire energy of the movie. That's Dean. Every scene that he's in, I'm just like, shut him up, someone. You're dragging the entire book down. You're dragging Cassie down. His personality is so bland. He's so boring. He's so boring. It's not even funny. I was just like every time she was like, I'm in love with Dean, I think, I was like, why? What is the reason? Their relationship also was just trauma bonding. That's all it was. Throughout the series, the only time we see them interact is if they're talking about the investigation, if they're talking about his dad or her mom, and they both have like a really dark past connected to both of them. So it's just trauma bonding the entire time. You don't see a single grounded scene of them. You don't see a single scene of them interacting in a way where they're talking about their feelings, or they're reaching out to each other, or they're having like a lighter moment with each other. None of that. It feels so surface level. It's not even funny. In fact, all the relationships in these books seem so surface level. I could not be less invested in any of them. Then we have characters like Michael. Honestly, my preference is Michael over Dean. I don't give a shit about either of them with Cassie, to be honest, but if I had to choose, I would choose Michael. He's the other love interest for her, and he at least has some sense of personality in him. You know, he has complexity to him. He has a sense of humor. He has his walls built up, but he is vulnerable. He has layers to him. Dean has nothing. But a character that I did like was Leah. I liked her, and I especially loved Sloane. Sloane is my favorite character out of the entire bunch. She was such a breath of fresh air the entire series. She has so much personality, so much potential, so much worth, so much to her backstory, so much complexity, so much warmth. Like every time she's in a scene, you just feel like wrapping your arms around her and protecting her. Loved Sloane, absolutely, definitely my favorite in the entire series. Yeah, her characters, barring Sloane, are very poorly written, and you don't really care for the friendships that they have because the friendships feel so surface level. But I will say that does gradually improve through the series. By especially book 3, we start actually feeling the supposed found family that she's trying to force on us. We start feeling that in some sense, and I do feel like certain scenes I really was like feeling for them and feeling for their friendships, and I felt like I was in the room with them. So I feel like it does improve, but it takes way too much time. But another reason why I love the mystery so much is because these books are filled with so much tension. So much is happening all the time. There's so much information being blasted at you at every page. Like genuinely, it's hard to keep track sometimes, and I love that. There's not a single dull moment in these books, especially book 2 and 3. So fast paced. And I will say for the first time in a very long time, these books stumped me. I'm usually very good at figuring out plot twists, but I had a hard time with these. There was a major plot twist I was able to figure out in this one, but these two had me stumped the entire way. I was able to figure out some minor plot twists, but the bigger reveals caught me off guard entirely. I wasn't even close, wasn't even in the ballpark, and I love that. I think one of the bigger reasons why that happened was because she throws so much information at you constantly, and there's no breathing space between each event that unfolds, that you don't even have the time to truly collect all the information, gather all your senses before the next thing happens, and that's very, very clever of her. So yeah, I think books 2 and 3 were definitely my favorite out of the entire bunch. And then the fourth book, Bad Blood, was slightly disappointing in comparison. It was a good book, I had fun, but it was a little bit disappointing purely because of the way the mystery unfolded ultimately. Like, this is the big finale of the entire series, right? So the culmination of everything felt like, I felt like she was pressured to do something big and dramatic and didn't fall in the right senses. Like, I'm a huge fan of, bringing back all the characters that we've seen in the other books in the finale and bringing them full circle, but the way it was done in this book was really forced. Like, so many characters that came back and were tied to the ending of this book that did not make sense, and it clearly happened to make it seem like, oh, whoa, this guy from that book was this all along. It made no sense. It was just shock factor. It was purely done for shock factor, which I did not enjoy. And also, so far in all these books, nothing has happened by fluke or by luck. um, Everything happens purely because they investigate very well and because of their skill, but the main climax is driven by something that happens by fluke, like literally by accident. It's their luck that it happened, and propelled them in the direction of the climax, which I was not happy with. I was like, why? It really put me off. I don't like it when the characters start winning because of luck, and that happened in this book, and I was not a fan of that. And just in general, the entire climax just felt so rushed. It was very poorly executed, very rushed. We did not really get closure between her and some of the other characters in the book, which I was disappointed by. It was fun, but not the best ending. And then there's also a novella at the end of this series called 12, which is included in my copy of Bad Blood. And that novella was a waste of my time. That's all I have to say about that. So overall, I would highly recommend these books. Honestly, the mystery is so damn worth it, even though you have to read the series with a pinch of salt because some other things don't exactly line up and aren't the best and well written. The mystery is so well worth it, it's not even funny. I would love to, like, I'm thinking of these books right now and I would love to experience them again purely for the adrenaline rush. So especially if you love reading mysteries, read it. Seriously, life changing. And staying on theme with Jennifer Lynn Barnes, the next book I read was Games Untold. Now, Games Untold, I honestly did not read the entire thing, but let me explain. Games Untold is a novella binder that comes in between the Inheritance Games series somewhere. I've read the Inheritance Games, that entire trilogy, and I've read the Brothers Hawthorne, and I wasn't the biggest fan of the series. I really enjoyed it, I loved it, but not in a way where I felt like I wanted to know more about these characters. And the Brothers Hawthorne also was very disappointing. So I don't mean to continue with the series or with this world. There's another trilogy coming up. Not interested in that. But in the Brothers Hawthorne, there was this one plotline that did intrigue me, and we were getting a novella of that plotline in the Games Untold. I think there are like about 8 stories in this novella, and one of them was that, and a couple of the stories that intrigued me. So I read half the stories in that book, and the other half I was like, I know I'm not gonna enjoy them, I don't care for them, so I didn't read them. So yeah, I read the Games Untold. I was curious about it, and my curiosity was satisfied, but I still don't care to continue with the series. That's all I have to say about that. Moving on from that, I got into my little sports romance era in December. I love reading sports romances, and I read 2 of them in December. The first was The Score by Elle Kennedy. Now, this is the 3rd book in the off-campus series. Everyone knows about them. She's the OG hockey romance writer. So these are hockey romances essentially. I want to say right off the bat, reading this was a very cozy experience for a couple of different reasons. Number one, I think, being that I read The Deal a couple of years ago, and I read The Mistake last year in December, so like 2023 December, and I read this 2024 December. So I've been reading these books spaced out in a year, not by choice, it just so happens that it's happening that way. But when I read The Mistake, I read it at a time when my dog Disney had just passed away, and I had picked up a bunch of books to help me cope in life. And so now when I think back to those books that I read during December and January, I have such fond memories of them. Even if they weren't books I fully enjoyed, I still think of them fondly. Like I think of like The Score and the Caraval trilogy and Powerless. Just a bunch of books I read during that time that make me feel so enveloped in warmth. I just look at the covers and I'm just like, oh, I feel so warm. And This Mistake is one of those books. So because it's part of that same series and involves the same characters and same friend group, instantly as I opened this book, I was enveloped by that same feeling of warmth, which was so nice to feel, honestly, because The Mistake reminds me of a time that, you know, those books like kept me together. It's a very fond feeling. So I don't know, I feel like I feel like memory and association works in such funny ways. An instant warm feeling by reading this, and also because Elle Kennedy has such a knack for writing characters and also just conversations that feel very real. They don't feel idealistic, they don't feel like they're coming from a book or from a movie or any of those ways or any of those things. I feel like these are all conversations that would happen with my friends. And she has a knack for writing green flag characters because both of them are such green flags. Dean is such a green flag. And I feel like this is such an important book because Dean in this book, he's a very sexual character. He's very open about his sex habits. He's very indulging. That's talked about in such a positive way. It's not looked down upon. It's not slut shamed. And I'm really happy about that. And we see that even though he's a very indulging character, it doesn't mean that he's disrespectful. Especially for the time that it was written in, I feel like it's such an important book. So I was really happy about that. All that being said though, it definitely wasn't my favorite out of the 3 that I've read so far. I enjoyed it, but it wasn't anything fantastic. It was like pretty in the middle for me. And also the book was very, very smutty, which I in general am not the biggest fan of reading smut. But this book was so sexual. I honestly was mostly just glazing over all the sex scenes because I just especially in December. I was not in the mood for reading senseless smut. All in all, basically, it was nice and I had fun. And then from that, I moved on to The Striker by Anna Huang. This was my first Anna Huang book and my last. I was never interested in reading the Twisted series by her. I just always knew they would never be my cup of tea, and like, I know what I like and what I don't like in romances. I'm very particular, and I knew those books were not the fit for me, especially billionaire romances are not my thing. So I never picked them up, and especially because I also saw Lexi Newly Nova's recap of that book, and from the bottom of my heart, I feel like Twisted Love is the stupidest story anyone could put out there. So I was like, definitely never reading that. And also her other series, King of Wrath, King of Envy, those books, not into it again. But I am into sports romances, and then she announced she's releasing a sports romance, so I was like, fine, I'll give it a shot. So I picked up The Striker, and it was mediocre at best. Like, don't get me wrong, it wasn't completely bad. The first half especially was more enjoyable than the second, but it wasn't anything to what people chalked it up to be for me. The Striker is a romance between a professional football player and a professional ballerina who's sort of retired from ballet. She went through an injury, so she had to, give up professionally dancing on stage. And I was interested in this for two reasons. It's a sports romance, obviously, but I am a huge fan of football, like what Americans call soccer, but it's actually football. I'm a huge fan of football, and I'm also a dancer, like I'm a professional dancer. So any book that has a dancer as characters, I'm in. I am in for it. I was very excited for this, to be honest, and it was very plain, like very vanilla. Like, honestly, the characters both were so vanilla. They had not a lot to them. The first half was enjoyable, and also a friend of mine was reading it at the same time, so we were discussing back and forth. So that also made the experience enjoyable, but the excitement quickly wore off. This book was also like really long. It's like 500 or 600 pages long, which it doesn't need to be. Absolutely does not need to be. So very quickly, the charm of the chase wore off. That entire plot of him chasing after her wore down very quickly. I'm a fan of the chase. Everything that comes after is usually pretty dull for me unless it's done right, and it wasn't done right in these books. For the most part, the book was pretty average. And also, one of the reasons I don't like billionaire romances is because everything the characters do in these books is so over the top and extravagant and out of touch. I cannot get with it personally. It does not feel romantic to me. The things that these billionaires do for their girls, that's one of the things that happened in this book, and it was not for me. I couldn't get with it. And also, this isn't a very smutty book, but there are some sex scenes, and the sex scenes were so bad. I anyway don't enjoy reading smut, and the smut that there was in this book was so badly written. It felt like it was written by like a 13-year-old on Wattpad. Genuinely, I'm not even exaggerating. Like, it was so stupid. It felt like a caricature of what sex scenes should be written as. Yeah, it was a very vanilla story. That's all I have to say. There's another book in the series. It's gonna be a series. So there's another book coming up which is about her brother. I could not care less about her brother. He was such a frustrating character. Don't give a shit. So yeah, that's that. That's where my journey with Anna Huang begins and ends. Anyway, the last book I read for December, the book that I ended the year on, is The Great Gatsby by F. Scott Fitzgerald. Now you all know already, I talked about it last year that I wanted to read more classics. I wanted to get back into classics. So I thought it would be fitting for me to end the year on this one. I honestly don't really have much to say about this. All I can say is that I understand why this book is recommended reading for literature students. In college, I was a double major. I was a double major in literature and psychology. So if I had to read this, which it was recommended to me in my American lit classes, so if I had read this properly back then, I think I would have enjoyed it a lot more. There's definitely a lot of great themes in this book about, the American dreams and class intersection and poverty, and just themes of individualism and morality and the layers of contrast that exist between all of these. So there is quite a bit to dissect in this book. However, unless I'm a lit student in my class, I don't think this is something I would ideally reach for. It doesn't really give much to someone who's an average reader, especially someone my age at this point, where I've read a ton of books on these themes. Dissected a lot of books like these in my literature classes and after as well. It's like this, the book doesn't particularly give me anything new. There's no new perspective that it's shedding. There's no new perspective to be had. everything I read in this book was pretty familiar. So it was a good one-time read, but I wasn't really captivated by it all that much. But I do look forward to seeing the movie, so there's that. And with that, we close the chapter on 2024 officially. Those are all the books I read in December. Let me know if you've read any of these. Let me know what you finished the year off with, or what you look forward to reading in this year. I have a feeling I'm going to read a lot of great books this year, especially right now. I'm reading a lot of great books. I can't wait to discuss them in January, in the January wrap up. So look forward to that, and let me know if you will be picking up this series. I honestly want more people to read this, and I want more people to discuss this with. So yeah, let me know what you thought of this. And yeah, if you want to follow me on social media, on like Instagram, Pinterest, Spotify, Fable, Storygraph, anything, everything will be linked down below. And I think we can end the video with that. So yeah, thank you for watching. Please like, share, subscribe and comment, and I'll see you guys in the next video.